Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking. I did a video last week or the week before, I don't remember when, but I actually, in my ramblings as I talked like this, I mentioned the idea of maybe me taking the chance to describe a little bit to all of you that what goes through my mind as far as when I'm creating a new campaign. Now, and then I had a couple people mention that they would love to see a series of videos that would do that, and as far as like maybe like creating a campaign, creating your world, and yeah, so I'm gonna try to do that. I'm once again, like I've always said, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, that, and the other thing, and then like I do 2 or 3 videos and I forget about it and I don't get back to it. So hold me to it. I'm gonna try to go through the process that I usually use when I am doing my world building, when I'm creating my new campaign. Now, I am in a weird situation right now where I'm playing I'm playing a campaign now for about 2 years. I've mentioned a few times that like I just, after being almost 2 years of playing, my bard, which I'd never played a bard before in my life, my bard presently just got to level 7 after 2 years. We take it very, very slow, and it's a very, very gradual procedure. It is more about the story and the experience of the campaign than it is about the leveling and the advancement of power for our characters. Yes, but Connor Dillon is the only character left out of our group, which is we have a DM and 5 players. It is the only character left that was there from the very first session. So I have the belief that my my Dungeon Master Jason has it out for Connor Dillon. I think he wants him to be killed, because I've managed to escape a great deal. But so far I'm doing okay. But anyway, regardless, the thing is that once that campaign wraps up, which I don't know when it's going to, my buddy Andy is up next to run, and he's been working on a Norse themed campaign. He's been working on it pretty steadily over the last 9 months or so, and according to tradition, then after Andy, like my buddy Craig will run a campaign after that. So, and these campaigns run years. They run year or two. And they eventually and so I'm looking at best guess is that 3 years from now I'll be able to run a campaign. So I have had campaign ideas just bounce back and forth into my head, and I'm kind of in a weird situation where I've got plenty of time to create my campaign and to refine it and to do so. And so I carry, I don't have it with me, I should have brought it in when I did this video, but I carry with me a notebook wherever I go. Now, yes, I know you can use your phone and you can write stuff in your phone, but I don't like that. But I carry with a little pocket-sized notebook, and so whenever an idea pops into my head, I usually take that notebook out and I just scribble out a few sentences of that idea. And I try to make sure I remember to do that, and make sure that I remember to because in my older age now, it's one of those things where it's like I tend to say, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and then I promptly forget about it. So I've been trying to maintain that. I keep those notes straight and keep that whole process moving forward. Now, so one of the things that I think is very important to keep on, and this is when you're creating a campaign, one, take notes. When you see something cool, if you see something in a movie that you think is awesome, if you see something that is interesting, take notes or jot it down or do a little memo or whatever you want to do. But those things, you'll forget about them, and you want to keep those fresh. But regardless, this is going to be, I'm going to try to be very, very specific with my how I create a campaign world, how I create a campaign, and then I'm going to have each one of these videos be a specific thing. Now, enough preamble. I think I've been talking now forever, like 4 or 5 minutes as it is. So let me just say, the very first thing, whenever you're creating a campaign, and this is before you even think about the world, before you even think about like the goal of the campaign, if you know, whatever, think about the scope of the campaign. Now, what I mean by scope is that I want you to just stop and think, what is the goal of this campaign? Is it a thing where you know, you want a campaign to last, you know, 4 or 5 player sessions and then you're done? Is it something that you want it to just be ongoing and not no real specific end? Do you have in mind a grand story that's going to be told, like for each of those characters or whatever? Is it something where it's like, you know, they're going to have to save the world, if you will? You know, and it doesn't matter what it is, but you have to have an idea of the scope of the campaign. Now, also, what's very important is you need to understand, like, the scope of the campaign in regards to its location in the world that you're creating. Now, I'm going to mention, and this is kind of, I keep showing this book, and I apologize for that, but so Rapanathuk, and I'm just very briefly, big giant dungeon that created by Bill Webb over at Frog God Games. Rapanathuk is a dungeon that has dozens upon dozens upon dozens upon dozens of levels, and you could play that book over the course of years, and your players would never get through it all. Now, that's huge. But it's one dungeon. And one of the things that I always kind of bother me, and I've said this to a few people and in previous videos, is that, like, when you look at the world of the Lost Lands, which Rapanathuk technically is a part of, but you can put it in anything you want, the Lost Lands are by themselves huge. Like, I mean, there is stuff everywhere in the Lost Lands. And the Rapanathuk is this tiny little bit. But it's all about, it's once again about scope. It's like I live in this house in Moorhead, Minnesota. It's it's big, right? I mean, like, I've got, you know, there's like, what, you know, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. You know, I mean, it's a big house in Minnesota. But there's houses that are bigger than it. My neighborhood is bigger than it. The city is bigger than that. The state of Minnesota is bigger than that. You know, the United States is bigger. You know, you see where I'm going with this. Eventually, you get to the fact that the Earth is so much bigger than this house, and then, like, the solar system is so much bigger than the Earth, and so on and so forth, right? And so, as important as Rapanathuk is, and how great it is, it's still just this tiny little bit, as big as it is, a tiny little bit in the world of the Lost Lands. So, my point is that you have the scope of your campaign. You can have your players say, you know what, all they're going to be worried about for the entire campaign is making sure, and this isn't an idea for, this could be an idea for a campaign, but making sure they overthrow the evil dragon lord that controls like the valley that they happen to live in. You know, and the valley could be like, you know, something that's like 300-400 miles square or something like that. But there's an evil red dragon lord that controls it, and that's going to be your entire campaign. But that evil red dragon lord is just like one dragon in that giant world that may or may not even exist in your mind as you're creating that. But you have to remember that, like, PCs kind of have this attitude of, like, you know, every once in a while they kind of wander off. You know, they don't really do what they do. So you have to decide, is it going to be something like that, where, you know, is there going to be something bigger than just that valley that your characters are in? And then you have to decide, oh, okay, well, if there's going to be something bigger than that, maybe it's something where the players will have to travel, and they're going to travel to this other country, this other, like, kingdom, that they'll travel to get the answers as to how to create the dragon killing sword that they actually then have to travel to the Dwarven Kingdom to take care of. And now all of a sudden now you have this larger scope, right? Because not only were you in your valley, but you heard about the fact that there's this, like, ancient script on how to create dragon killing swords, and it's somewhere, in this like weird kingdom off to the east, where they're gonna have to go and talk to a sultan and try to convince them, and then he wants them to go and defeat this band of evil Ifrit that are destroying his shipping lines and stuff like that. So I mean, and this is all the stuff I'm coming up with the top of my head, but now all of a sudden the scope of your campaign is growing exponentially, right? Because now they're traveling to this thing, and you got an entire world over here. Now they got to go to this dwarven kingdom and have them, make this sword, but they actually have to then, find all these special ingredients, and they're going to send you off to get those special ingredients. So now the scope just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Maybe you don't want the scope to be that big, but you need to decide what the scope of the campaign is going to be. And that's like the biggest, toughest decision I think that people can have at the very beginning, because the larger the scope gets, the more time it's going to take you to create. There's nothing wrong with creating a self-contained, hey, my players are going to be in this valley, they're never going to leave this valley, and and they're going to, their whole goal is to kill this red dragon. That's the whole thing. And that can be a very satisfying and a very fun campaign. And that in itself doesn't mean it's short. You could make that campaign last years. But you need to figure out just what kind of like terrain, what kind of coverage you're going to need to make to create. And then once you figure out that scope of the campaign, you're going to need to figure out exactly then how you're going to go on and make your campaign world, and how you're going to go about creating that world, and how you're going to what's going to be unique about it, what's going to be cool about it, what's going to like be interesting about it. That's going to keep your players interested in the world, because there's two things I think that are very, very important when it comes to D&D and your players. And your player group might be different, but for my gaming group, there's two things that I need to do to get them to buy into the world that I'm giving them, and it has a lot to do with two things, and those are immersion, which means that there is like the players have bought into the world. Like they are not, in their mind, when they're sitting at the table, they're not thinking, I'm sitting at Andy's house, which is where we play D&D. I'm sitting at Andy's house and at his table in his kitchen, and I'm sitting here right now and I've got this piece of paper in front of me and I'm playing D&D. They're saying, I'm Connor Dillon, and I'm walking down the paths of this ancient ruined city that is filled with the undead. Like I'm seeing this in my head, and I'm not really at this table. And so immersion is key, and going hand in hand with that, and how you actually create immersion and increase immersion, is verisimilitude. And it's a big fancy word for making things seem real. And having those two things for my group are very, very important. And it's something that our players need to feel like they are part of that world, that they are affecting that world is affecting them, and they're all buying into it. And we're all buying into that story, and we're creating those stories, those memories that are going to be important to us. So, but to get there, to create that world that people can buy into, you need first the scope of the campaign. So that's the first step. That's this first video. The next video I'm going to do is going to be okay, so you have your scope. Now let's go ahead and create that world. The skeleton of that world, and then create, and then after we have that skeleton of the world, we're going to move on, and we're going to actually start, putting into play like the inhabitants of that world. So that's the next one, though, is creating the campaign world. Not so much, maybe I'll show off a map or two, I probably not, but creating the actual world will be the next video in this series. So, all right, so there you go. That's episode number 1 of what I think you need to do to create a good campaign. If you have any comments or questions or whatever, please feel free to mention those. Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. As always, be the best version of you possibly can be. I really am digging the interactivity that I'm getting from my audience right now, and so I thank each and every one of you for giving me the feedback and the thumbs ups and things like that. It means a lot. So you're awesome. I'm the Undead Viking. Remember, be positive. Be the kind of person people want to be around, and give that love to the universe so you can get the love from the universe right back at you. Until next time, take it easy.